what happened to me, what happened to us is reflective of a greater sensation in America, a greater history of violence and white supremacy and the climate in America, which is not new or sudden, of people disagreeing with others and choosing violence, not having the freedom or capacity to respect someone's opinions or their right to say, right to free speech, and to choose, violence or some kind of extreme way to deal with, a foundation of fear.
I'm so excited that you have written your debut novel finally now in your mid-40s. So does life begin at 40? Why is it taking you this long to write? Because I know you've actually written prose all through your career, but you just haven't published it in this form.
I think I had to wait until I really felt I had something to say in a novel form. It's such a sacred kind of calling, and it's exhausting, and it's wonderful, and it's terrifying. And when my mother died, I just thought, it's the time now. It's time to do it. I like being this age, though, because I know who I am. So I feel like with the novel, it's just, I know what I want. I've lived a lot of life. Had a lot of experiences. I'm so happy to be here with you, Mariella.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, it's an incredible, beautiful, and very powerful novel. And it does explore and navigate a theme that props up constantly in your work, something you won't be unaware of, which is that of your mother's presence and now absence, of course. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with your mother and your mother, because it sounds, I mean, I don't know if you've idolized it to an extent, but it sounds incredibly enviable.
I think, I think all of us, what kind of mother we have, stays with us, and our mothers, and it's a kind of topic where mothers and daughters, mothers and children, and writing about mothers and making art about mothers. But my mother and I had a really close relationship. It could be complicated.
How many siblings?
I'm the eldest of 4. Wow. And so, it was she just had so much to say, but she was very feisty. She was very defiant. And I've inherited a lot of that. And she's a very kind woman, but she also took, no crap off of people. And she got sick when I was very young, when I was about 11 or 12. And so I never took her for granted because I didn't know how long I'd have her. And I was fortunate to have her, through most of my kind of girlhood and growing up. And, she really adored me, and she was always trying to protect me. And sometimes, it was very claustrophobic, but then other times, especially now without her in her absence, I thought, oh my God, she's given me such a trove to go out into the world and know how to deal with this thing or that thing. And then I think, of this word promise, and I think all of the promises that she made me, but at the same time, like any parent, any mother, you want to protect your child, and then there's the world. And how do you do that,
And of course, her experience, as illustrated in part in this novel, was a difficult one, a really difficult one. She grew up at a time when, black rights were not a thing. The very earliest period of the civil rights movement, she was poor. I wonder how all of that played into your experience then, and how she dealt with the fact that she had this daughter who wanted to be an artist, which must have felt like an incredible luxury in comparison to the life that she'd had to live.
Yes, so she was born in 1954, which is kind of the official birth of the civil rights movement, and promises a bit of a love letter to her, but also me really being curious about what it would have been like in 1954 for a young black girl growing up who's had a mother who's died when she's quite young, and to kind of look around and be at that time when there were so many tensions in America. You've got the civil rights, you've got music, you've got art and culture, and things, black people are out on the front lines in a different kind of way. But for someone like her, growing up in Washington, D.C., where I was also born, I kind of imagine what would have been possible for her. And so I think some of the hope and promise for me is to give her memory, a kind of life and dream that she was trying to give to me. And
did she worry about you and
she did.
and
She
what
wanted
you
me to
wanted
be
to
a
do?
lawyer. She wanted me to be a doctor, and many a times we could clash because she'd be anything. What do you mean you're going to be a poet? You know, why am I spending money to put through school? You're going to be a bum. And at the end of her life, I remember after her funeral in her office, I found this bookshelf, and I opened up the bookshelf. She had every clipping, she had journals where my work was, she had my books, and she had it all lined up. And I needed to see that. You know, when I saw that, I thought she got it. Like, she understood, you know, I was like her flower child. But she understood, and I think she was worried for me because she knew how dangerous it could be, and that people wouldn't say, oh, sure, a writer, like, good luck with that, you know? Whereas it's a thing when a parent has, like, this is my doctor, or my lawyer, or this person is in banking or finance, and they're very safe and secure. She was also always worried about security and safety for me, which I think many parents are. How are you going to take care of yourself? How are you going to take care of yourself when I'm not here? And at the same time, you know, parents, they say, follow your dreams, but it's also sometimes their dreams or what they want for you because they want to protect you from a bigger world that can just devour you. So I think about that.
I mean, in a way, I mean, sorry, it's a bit clunky and blunt, but it's probably lucky she wasn't around to see what happened last year with your husband, Salman Rushdie, because I'm sure that would have caused her enormous consternation, and it was the most horrific attack. And so much of this book is predicated around that idea of safety, that notion of safety that you explore. I wondered how that impacted on your own sense of, I don't mean literally, like walking down the street, but emotionally, because something so shattering, something so brutal, something so out of a clear blue sky, if you will, must have a profound impact.
Oh, yes. I mean, profound would certainly be a word that I'd use, but I also think what happened to me, what happened to us is reflective of a greater sensation in America, a greater history of violence and white supremacy and the climate in America, which is not new or sudden, of people disagreeing with others and choosing violence, not having the freedom or capacity to respect someone's opinions or their right to say, right to free speech, and to choose, you know, violence or some kind of extreme way to deal with, you know, a foundation of fear. You know, people are very afraid of each other, and rather than having conversations, there are things in their imaginations that get going, and you just can't have any sense of expectation for that, you know?
But that's an environment that you live in America every day, and probably, like so many things that we live with every day, you become inured to. But when something happens, as with that horrendous attack on Salman, I feel like it must shift the tectonic plates that of the ground that you stand on, you know, in terms of, this book was obviously written before that attack. I wonder how different it would have been, the notion of safety that you explore.
Oh, I think about that all the time, you know, and there's a part of me that mourns that alternative life and that woman who would have been publishing her debut novel. But
do you feel that different? Is
I
there
do.
a before
I'm very
and an after?
changed. I feel like I'm changed, but I always am trying to be optimistic, and so you know, I feel that the strength and resilience and courage that I have in me, my mother taught me that years ago, and so I didn't have to be strong because I am strong, and I think it is a gift to be under such duress, and to have gratitude, and to be able to find moments to say thank you, and to still be vulnerable, and at the same time step into territory that would be unimaginable. I would never wish for anyone to go through what I've had to go through or what he's had to go through, but at the same time, it is a gift to have art. and to be able to come through and have a book and say, I'm a storyteller and I'm an artist, and I have that identity and no one can take that from me.
And in many ways, that's really what your husband has been fighting for all of his writing life, is that ability for writers to be able to say whatever they want in order to explore ideas and not to be silenced. And yet we live in particularly difficult times, or polarized times, when it comes to freedom of speech, when it comes to the right, you know, you can be accused of appropriation, you can be accused of... Do you feel as strongly as Salman clearly does about the fact that writers, there shouldn't be restrictions on thought and expression when it comes to literature?
No, I don't think I would ever want to try to police another writer or police another writer's or artist's imagination of the work that they're making. I think the stronger thing is to try to understand it, to try to place a context around it, to try to think of the history or the moment that has brought that writer to a place. And also, you know, for me, I think growing up in America as a Black woman, where, I mean, since time of enslavement, no one wants to hear from a Black woman. Black women's feelings and expressions are often muted, they're neglected, they're not taken into account in the same way that other people's identities and privileges are taken into. So for me, growing up, seeing Black women and Black people and coming from a Black culture where the right to speak, the power to stand up and say I'm a human being and I have rights, is something that has raised me. So it doesn't feel sudden for me. It feels like I now have an opportunity to thank those people and to keep going forward and to encourage next generations to speak and express themselves. And I have a lot of admiration for this generation of writers and creators and people in my community who are speaking and who are challenging the past and tradition and saying, this time is like no other. And so we need different ways, different vocabularies and languages to hear each other and to listen to each other and our needs.
You talk about sort of challenging the past and traditions, and I wondered, having immersed yourself, which you must have done for the novel, very deeply in that period of the early civil rights movement and the hopes and dreams and passions of that period, and the sense, I think, very much that, you know, it was worth sacrificing even yourself for, because there was this dream that things would change. How did it feel comparing that period with America now, where it feels like an awful lot of what was dreamt of hasn't been realized?
That's a wonderful question, and I think, you know, it's a question that I'm walking around with each day, because Promise is a historical novel, but it's a contemporary novel. Every theme in the novel is pretty much happening right now. Police brutality, the fights in the Supreme Court, the fights and struggles for human rights and justice. I mean, it feels like it is the civil rights movement. It hasn't left. It was, we made progress, and then, and that was hard won. And now we're back, returned in a sense, although I really start to think now, did we ever really leave it? Back to a space where there's just violence and challenges and laws. They're going to ban books. We're going to same-sex marriage. I mean, there's just so many things that are being attacked on every front. And so it's strange for me, because I thought my novel would come out and we'd say, oh, that's a distant time. It's not like that. But so many people are saying we're back in the 1950s now. And then the harder question is saying, like, how far did we really leave the 1950s and that mindset and that need to have certain modes of whiteness preserved, a certain kind of privilege, and now there just seems to be such a fight and struggle of who's going to have resources, who's going to have power. You know, these books are unsafe for our children. We don't want them to be taught that. But what are we teaching them? I mean, you know, we're teaching them to hide under desk in their school because there's an active shooter and they're all going to be killed. You know, it's just so...
Dr. Seuss might be an improvement.
Yeah, I'll take green eggs and ham. you know, so
It must, I mean, to your 1950s point, the fact that the next election looks like it might be fought between two octogenarian white men. How does that feel to a young woman like yourself in America?
Just, you know, you watch, you try to figure out where you can help, where you can be active, and where you can feel that you are lending your energy and your attention and your vote to what can help, what issues.
But isn't
you
it
can
depressing?
help.
I mean, who do you vote for?
It's
I mean, in that landscape.
It's completely depressing, and you just watch these different factions go at each other, and then you think, well, something kind of descends, something else will come and be, you know, the savior, but that's not going to happen.
Certainly
and you
not for
have
this
to
election.
watch it, and then you have to think of everyone who came before you and what they would have felt thinking of democracy in America, and at the same time not to be fatalistic, to say we still have to keep walking toward whatever that dream is or whatever that freedom is. And these words feel so elastic and dangerous, but also we can't like let them go. So I think it's very frustrating and right now disappointing and alarming, and people are just talking over each other. They're not really meeting in a center. And then there's just fires every day, you know, moral outrage. There's just fires everywhere. And you just try to think, you know, how can I keep standing? How can I not fall prey to just despair? Yeah.
You wrote your novel in the house with the winner of the Booker of Bookers. I know that those things, you know, obviously transcend just, you know, a day-to-day relationship. But at the same time, it must make it slightly more daunting. How, you know, does it make it more difficult? Is it like having your own creative writing course in the house? You know, I just wonder, you know, how that plays out, because an awful lot of great male novelists have partners who don't impinge on their territory. And so it's probably to your husband's credit that he's prepared to share writing space.
Well, he's always been encouraging of me from the moment we've met. And Promise was written before I met him. And I think, you know, he is just so excited for this book and supportive of me and encouraging of me. We have a lot of mutual respect for each other, and we share our successes, and we get to tell stories and be really positive. So we're, you know, he always treats me as an equal, and he tells me that all the time. So there's never a competition, and he has had quite an illustrious career. So, you know, he doesn't approach our home life that way. We're both vulnerable, and I think he's such a writer that, you know, the same vulnerability that any writer or creator, is this working? Is it not working? What do you think of this? And what do you think of that? And, you know, and that we have a lot of fun. There's a lot of humor. We laugh a lot. So there's a joy and respect, and it's great to live in a space and share a life where you can be your full and total self.
And just finally, I wondered how much your mother's voice had carried you, and her strength, or the strength she instilled in you, had carried you through the last year, which, you know, will have been incredibly difficult, even if it ends with something as hopeful as the publication of your debut novel.
Thank you. You know, she's just always with me. I can always talk to her. I can always remember different things she told me, which I didn't know when I was younger. Oh, what does she know? What does she know? But now I say, I hear you, and I see what you meant. And what I know is that she's very proud of me. Yeah.
Wow, that's a wonderful thing to carry in your heart.